Middle game of our series against the Springfield Cardinals, and we are joined by Lieutenant Mitch Harris of the Springfield Cardinals bullpen. And Mitch, we talked a lot about your story on the air when you guys were back at Dr. Pepper Ballpark over the weekend. Went to the Naval Academy, served nearly 5 years in the Navy before getting a chance to play in pro ball. And now here you are, your second season. What has this journey, this ride been like for you?
It's been a blast. To look back over the last 6-8 years to realize, where I was, the challenges of wondering, if I'll make it this far, and then the realization of being here and actually doing well is, I don't want to say a dream come true because I didn't dream of being in AA, but it's another stepping stone to fulfilling the dream.
So let me ask you where this all started. You went to the Naval Academy to play baseball and obviously serve your country. What led you to being interested in attending the Naval Academy to begin with?
So I was in a small town in North Carolina in high school, Belmont, Mount Holly area. I lived in Mount Holly, went to school in Belmont, and long story short, the defensive coordinator for the football team at Navy is from that area, came to recruit at our high school. He had a good football team. While he was there, the head baseball coach is the assistant football coach at our high school, and they're good buddies. So he came by the baseball field before heading over to football practice late in the year, and saw me throwing a bullpen, asked where I was headed the next year, hadn't committed anywhere yet, and called the academy and said, hey, we got a guy down here you might want to look at. And next thing I know, I'm doing a visit to Naval Academy, and a couple days later they said they would like for me to go there, and that was the beginning of it. They asked me to come play baseball there, and I did. And then once I got there, I really understood what the military was all about, and understood that commitment and that the pride of being in the military.
So as you became one of the best pitchers in the country as your college career wove on, did you realize that, hey, there might be a chance that I'm not going to get a chance to play pro ball right away?
It hit kind of late. Freshman year I only threw about 15 innings. And my sophomore year is when it really kicked off. Had a real good sophomore year. Came back junior year and had a decent season then. Was drafted that year, and that's when we kind of realized something's going to have to happen, and we're going to have to figure out how it's going to work. And we want to do it right from the beginning. So we looked at all the different avenues and different ways to look at it, and we weren't sure. We knew there was a policy coming out possibly to do 2 years of active duty and then extend your reserve time. That didn't go through like we were anticipating. I put in paperwork to try to continue to play baseball, knowing that I could come back and give my commitment later. You can't necessarily come back and play baseball when you're older. So we tried to make sure we did all the right things and did it to where we could do both. It didn't work out like we had planned, so there was definitely doubts along the way. But I think looking back that it worked out for the best, and glad to finally be doing what I wanted to be doing and fulfilling that dream.
You said you submitted the paperwork. I think twice you applied and you were rejected on that. Did you lose hope that, hey, maybe this just isn't in the cards for me?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because that's a span of over 3 or 4 years. So I was putting in paperwork, and when you're on deployment out in the middle of nowhere, trying to figure out if I'm ever going to be able to keep going on that dream was tough to swallow sometimes. Not realizing couldn't throw, couldn't get in shape like I wanted to. I was trying to figure out if I was ever going to be able to go back and do it. So it was tough during that time, but I knew what I signed up for once I graduated. I knew what that meant, and so I had to be strong. And I was the officer of 20 so guys, so I couldn't let that affect how we led every day. So it was a struggle, definitely. I think with anyone who has a dream and a goal, it's tough sometimes when there's stuff that gets in your way, but that's part of it. It makes you stronger, and I think looking back, that was a big part of it.
Was your story well known among your colleagues and your fellow sailors?
Oh yeah, every ship that I went to before I even went there, I made sure the CO and everyone above me understood that I was there for the right reasons, but I also had this long-term goal of playing professional baseball, and made sure they knew that wasn't going to affect my day-to-day operations. And once that was put out there on the table, everything was fine. And they understood, and they were very supportive. So it was great to have that support. And looking back, it was a lot of help during those tough times to know that they had my back. They wanted me to do the right thing at the time, and that the right thing would happen eventually.
You would think after that amount of time not playing in or organized baseball that it would take a toll on your arm, and I'm sure you've worked very hard to get your arm back up to where it is, but you were low mid-90s at our ballpark over the weekend. How difficult was it to be able to get your arm back into shape, and were you able to play a little bit of catch on your deployments?
Yeah, it was really tough. I didn't know how much throwing, if any, during deployments that I would get to do. And my first ship had a larger flight deck. My second ship had a very small flight deck, so I wasn't able to throw on the second ship. But the first ship I threw as much as I could. The biggest thing was I just kept my body in the best shape that I could, knowing that when I had the chance to throw, I didn't want anything to break down or get hurt when I really started to ramp it up throwing. But even so, coming back 3 years ago, I had my first spring training, and it was a very humbling experience coming in, being as stiff as I was, not being able to throw as well as I'd like. I was 80, 82 the first time I got on the mound, and it was hard mentally to see that much of a drop. But I knew I had a lot of work ahead of me. We were able to do some yoga, do some stretching, and all kinds of stuff to really get those tendons and ligaments and muscles all stretched back out and working again. And we've made some long strides, and I think we're starting to get back into the conditioning phase now of being able just to repeat that.
It must have made you, I would imagine, a little bit of a celebrity on the ship as well. I'm sure there was no shortage of guys who wanted to play catch with you.
Oh yeah, it was fun. You had guys that wanted to play catch, but you had to do it as nice as possible, because some people didn't realize, when I said play catch, we weren't tossing. So I was fortunate to have a couple guys on there. One guy particularly was from the Dominican. He played baseball growing up, and he was a cook, and we'd go out on the flight deck when during non-meal hours and go throw with him, and so I was able to actually let several loose, and he was able to catch when I needed someone to catch.
We're here with Lieutenant Mitch Harris, who served in the U.S. Navy before coming into professional baseball. As much as you can tell us, because I know military actions are somewhat confidential at times, what sorts of duties did you perform? Where were you deployed? Where did your travels in the Navy take you?
My first ship, I was a weapons officer on USS Ponce. It's LPD. All my ships, I was always based out of Norfolk. On that ship, we did 2 deployments, both of which were to the Gulf. I went to several countries over there. Did a 7-month and like a 3-month before I transferred to another ship. The other ship was USS Carr, it's a frigate. And we went on one deployment there. It was a 6-month deployment. We went to Russia and the Baltics, kind of do a diplomatic deployment, and then the second half of that deployment went down to South America, did drug ops for the last half of that. But it was great. I got to see over 30 countries in about 4.5 years. So looking back, it was a blast, and I loved every minute of it.
When you finally did get your release early in 2013, describe that feeling for me.
It's hard to describe. I mean, when I got the phone call that they were going to let me out in time to get to spring training last year, as soon as I got done with that phone call, I immediately called the Cardinals, my family, and it was just a relief to know that the dream wasn't dead, that I was able to continue to pursue that. It was probably one of the happier days of my life, as well as my family's life, to know that as a young kid, that's what I wanted to do, and there was on the first step of the journey to fulfill that dream.
You mentioned some of the hard work that you've had to put in to be able to get that velocity back up, but just looking at the numbers, fine year last year pitching in short season ball, where I think you were older than your manager from what I read, and here coming up to Double-A, throwing the ball extremely well. The transition, I'm sure, has been much different environment culturally to move in from the Navy to pro ball, but you seem to be handling it quite well.
Yeah, there's a lot of differences, but really there's a lot of similarities. I mean, as much travel as we do, that's easy for me. Living out of bag is something I feel like I've done for a long time. The atmosphere is great. Being an older guy was something I was used to, but also something that I had to work with in the Navy. I was a younger guy then, but I was in charge of guys who were much older than me. So I had to remember what that was like to understand, how to relate with those guys and that were younger than me, and even the coach. But a lot of things I learned in the military I've incorporated here, and it's been an easier transition than I imagined.
You pitched on Memorial Day, appropriately enough, on Monday. They made an announcement at Dr. Pepper Ballpark recognizing your service. That must have been a special moment for you.
Yeah, it really was. And Memorial Day is special because as much as I appreciated the acknowledgement and everything, I really think about that day as the guys who didn't make it back. I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to go into any serious combat, but there's a lot of guys and girls that didn't make it back. And a lot of times the toughest days I think about out here are really nothing compared to what other people have gone through and families have gone through. So it was really special to be able to pitch on that day, and more importantly, pitch for the people that I served with, and the people who've given the ultimate sacrifice so that we can do this and have the freedoms that we do have.
Well, that's the perfect perspective to have, and what you did at the Naval Academy and then in the U.S. Navy, it's something that we all appreciate. We appreciate the service that you've given to your country, and we wish you the best of luck here moving forward, and hopefully we see you up in the big leagues in not too long. Thanks so much for the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That's Mitch Harris, Lieutenant Mitch Harris of the Springfield Cardinals. We'll be back right after this here on the Frisco RoughRiders Baseball Network.